Hey everybody, Casey Johnston here, back in the booth in the portal, and today I got something really special for y'all. If you'll look at the screen on the left or right or wherever it ends up, I've got Travis Mcbee.
Hey,
say hi, Travis.
Hi.
Travis is the author of Bridgeworld, the latest title that you'll see out on Audible, or if you're listening to this in the future, one of the titles that we have out on Audible. And I am the narrator for Bridgeworld, as well as I'm on for Bridgeworld 2, 3, and 4 when he writes it.
I gotta write it.
Really excited about it. Loved this book. Y'all are going to love it. As always, I tell you to check it out in both print and in audio because it's two different experiences, and I stand by that. If you're only going to check one out, check it out in audio, just because I'm biased.
And then we both benefit.
Exactly, that's true. If you check the links below and in the description, you will find links to Travis's channel. He has quite the YouTube following and a plethora of fantastic videos, from things on guinea pigs and chinchillas all the way up through writing tips. If you're an author, I know I have some authors that do watch this and follow me on Facebook and probably will see this. Make sure you check it out because we can always be learning. Appreciate Travis coming on this channel. If you check out his channel, you'll actually see a similar video with the reverse. I'm going to be asking Travis some questions about how he did and came up with Bridgeworld, some of the things that went into it. We'll see where the conversation takes us. And Travis, I appreciate you joining me.
Glad to be here.
All right. So I know you've covered some of this in your YouTube, and want to kind of ask just a couple of things about the beginnings of Bridgeworld and how you came up with the overall story arc, but really how you came up with some of the characters and some of the plot points. And is it something that parallels points in your life? Have you been abducted by aliens? Are you an alien?
I can't disclose that to the rest. No, the idea for Bridgeworld, and for those who don't know, it's a boy finds out that his parents are aliens. They're all humans, but he's an alien, and then he gets to go back to their school in space with all the other aliens. But he's just like a normal kid from Alabama. The idea for it came, I remember I was just sitting on my parents' couch. It was at the summer after my freshman year of college, and I'd been wanting to write a book for a while. And I had tried some other stuff, but I was sitting there and I was thinking about this book that I had read years before called The Dark Side of Nowhere. And it's about a boy who finds out that he and his entire community are aliens that are actually like sleeper agents that are going to take over the world. But they weren't really humans. They were like pink fuzzy monsters. But I was thinking about that. And I was thinking about like, well, what if he had to go back to the alien world and he was all on his own. He had to go by himself. Then I took that and I combined it with very strong elements of Ender's Game, which is one of my all-time favorite books.
As it should be.
Yeah, and then some Harry Potter influences that are unmistakable. And that's where Bridgeworld came about. And I went up there, like I had that idea, and I immediately went out and I wrote what ended up mostly being the prologue of the book. But it was weird, like really weird, with weird alien names and just weird stuff going on. And I wrote it, and it was maybe like 3,000 words. And I looked at it, I was like, this is hot garbage. So I abandoned it.
As the narrator, I appreciate you not having weird alien names.
Yeah. Oh, no. Make them hard for you. I'm adding some in the 4th book now.
Oh, thanks.
Well, no, I threw it away, well, figuratively thinking. I just left it on my hard drive on my computer. But about 6 months later, and after I had tried to write a couple other novels, I came back to it and I was like, well, what if I take it and I normalize it? Because I like sci-fi, but sometimes it just gets a little too far out there for me. So I was like, I'm going to take this concept and take it and kind of just make it normal and really focus on the human aspects of this, school trials and everything. Once I got started that time, it was like 2.5 months, and I had the thing done. And I took a lot of inspiration from my everyday life. Like every book, everything comes from everyday life. Mm-hmm. So I had just finished my freshman year of college. I was in the middle of my sophomore year of college when I was writing the book. So I was taking a lot of experiences of me leaving my childhood home, leaving high school and going off to college. And I was fairly popular in high school, not like a super popular kid, but I had tons of friends, never had problems getting dates, none of that stuff. And then I go off to college and I'm all on my own in this strange world, and like I didn't know anybody. So I took that and ran with it and learned, how to really restart your social life from the ground up, if you will. Now college wasn't quite as weird as Bridgeworld, being up in space. It was just down in South Georgia, so I mean it was still pretty weird. But
well, I mean, college can get weird.
yeah, yeah. But that really the going off to college was the biggest like real life inspiration that really informed Bridgeworld.
So when you say you started it and then you started writing some other works, did you write some short stories in between and kind of get those tweaked and published, and then came back to Bridgeworld with a little bit more confidence? Was part of it a confidence issue, kind of like it's such a daunting task to write this book?
Yeah, the idea of writing a novel, it's such a terrifying, like huge accomplishment to somebody who's never done it. And then once you do it, you realize it's not that hard. It's just a matter of doing it. But no, I tried to write another novel that was going to be like a dystopian, post-apocalyptic kind of thing. It wasn't really dystopian, but post-apocalyptic. It was kind of a silly concept of everybody thinks the world's going to end because there's like a meteorite coming to Earth. So the world just descends into anarchy and everybody's nuking each other and all sorts of stuff. And then nothing happens. So they just tore society apart for nothing.
I'd read it.
It didn't really go anywhere. I mean, I might be able now to take it and make it into something, but I got about 10, 15,000 words into that, and it just fell completely apart because I didn't know what I was doing.
Do you have, and we'll get back to Bridgeworld, but it just leads me into, do you have, because I've heard other authors talk to plenty of authors, do you have any completed manuscripts that you're just like, or you sent them out to publishers and they got returned or rejected, or you just, I'm not happy with it, so,
yeah, I've got several. I've got one, the most recent book that I wrote all the way through, it's a 215,000 word epic. I mean, it's a humongous book. It took me like 18 months to write. And it's supposed to be the Triton book, but I just got done with the first read through because I usually let them sit for a while, then read through them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hot garbage. I mean, it's just a piece of shit. So,
like can't be saved hot garbage.
Yeah, like there's some elements in it that are really, really good, but as a whole, it's like all these cliches and shit that I preach against, then I ended up doing it. Because it was a struggle writing it. I was like grinding through it, and you can just tell. Like I was just doing it, not feeling inspired. It's bad. It's never seen the light of day.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've put yourself in a position now with your writing tips and everything else. Which, by the way, if y'all haven't ever seen Travis's writing tips, they're really great for most aspects of creativity. It's definitely gauged towards authors and writing and everything else, but most aspects of creativity, there's some good tidbits in there for you. So check that out. But you put yourself in a little bit of a position to where you have to stay away from some of those really common tropes and things like that.
Yeah, I have to do what I say. So
yeah, it's a tough thing.
If I'm preaching against doing something, I can't go out and do it. But no, I mean. I've heard Stephen King and other people talk about it. Like even when you've written a bunch of books, just every once in a while you put out something that's a piece of shit, or you write something that's a piece of shit, and hopefully you catch it before you publish it.
I love Stephen King. I love Dean Koontz, but there are periods of their careers, like you've pointed out before, that I can forget they're there, and I'm sure they want to forget they're there. Well, maybe not, and they still made hundreds of $1,000s on the worst of their books. Well, I was going to ask what character you connect with most, but it seems like that's probably going to be Will. So I'm going to ask, what characters, if any, did you base off of friends of yours, perhaps?
Michael on Earth.
And you don't have to call out friends necessarily.
I'm calling him out. Calling him out. But Michael on Earth was just Will's best friend. He's Mitchell, my best friend that I've had since the first grade. He shows up in a lot of books. I tweak a couple characteristics. Mitchell in real life is very, very shy. And he's like the greatest natural raw athlete that I've ever met, but he doesn't do any sports related stuff, so he's never really in shape. and the Michael in Bridgeworld is very much in shape. He's the star running back on the team.
Right.
So that's that one. And then the freer on the Zegma team, Russell McOrley, he's based on a guy named Russell who was my roommate in college. So yeah, it's really chock full of characters. Sean Hester, who was based on a kid that I went to kindergarten with that I hated.
Okay. Fair.
All of the teachers are based off of teachers that I had in high school or college. You can really tell the ones that I really did not like. I think that comes through very, very clearly. But no.
Did you send them a free copy signed?
Oh, no. I probably should.
That'd be awesome.
No, I mean, a majority of the...
There's a YouTube video in and of itself.
Yeah. No.
Sending them off.
Yeah, majority of the characters, though, they're at least based on people in real life. Very few are really from, like, the ground up, just completely fabricated. I always have that at least kernel that I start with. Makes them feel more real to me.
Yeah. Is there anything specific, and again, I know you've talked about this numerous times, but anything, I know, for instance, I've heard you talk about, you did an outline for Bridgeworld, and you haven't necessarily done that moving forward on all of your books, maybe you have on some, but is there anything specific to writing your first novel that you've learned that you've taken with you on every other novel moving forward? Just, and I know there's plenty, but something very specific that you do each and every time, and you're like, I wish I'd done that on Bridgeworld, so now I do this every time.
Well, the outline thing, that was the tipping point between not being able to write a novel and writing a novel. And the biggest thing with that one was it just allowed me to condense like this huge overbearing thought of a novel. It's this huge thing, and then all of a sudden, no, step by step, the things that I need to do. And really, I don't need an outline for that anymore because I know I can write a novel. Just sit down and work every day, and it's going to take care of itself. So I think that's probably the biggest one, is just learning not to look at the big picture, look individual scenes, individual chapters, and every once in a while taking a step back and saying, okay, how does all this meld together? But it's really looking at the very, very small things, because if you look at the big things, it's so overwhelming, because you're talking about hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of hours of work going into creating this book. And if you look at all those hours at once, you're like, yeah, I'm going to go sell insurance or do something easy.
Very cool. So I'm struggling with some of that on mine. I'm venturing into writing, and I have been. It's one of those things, like many, I've been, quote, putting my toe in for a while. Never sent anything out for publishing anything, but I'm working on my first novel. And I tried to outline, and every time I outlined, I couldn't stick to the outline because the characters in my head wanted to do something different. So I've given up outlining, and I'm definitely, it's hot garbage right now. I'm just vomiting onto the page, but see where it leads me. Other than that, I had a question, and I didn't write this down originally, but how did you come up with the sports in Bridgeworld? Because Zegma, look, there's, I guess I can see a little tinge of Quidditch, for instance, in Zegma, and the ball floating around and things like that, but at the same time, not really. It'd be a very loose basis. How'd you come up with that sport, and are we going to be finally introduced into what the other sports in, this universe are in book 2, 3, 4, etc.?
Yeah, so Zegma, if you've read Ender's Game, it's much more based upon Ender's Game, where it's played in zero gravity, and they have special suits on.
Yeah.
So I knew I wanted a sport. It was just like, that was an all-night thing for probably a couple nights, sitting down and trying to figure out what this sport would be. And yeah, the most of the basis came from Ender's Game, that battle game, whatever it was called in the book. But no,
it's been a while since I read it, but yeah.
Yeah. But no, it was a couple different things. There was a game in elementary school that we played. It was called like Jedi or something. And you'd run around with pool noodles, and you'd smack people while you were, they were pushing around those little like scooter kind of like 4-wheel little carts. I don't even know.
I know the carts you're talking about, the little red ones.
Yeah, just like a little disc, and you scoot around, backwards on them. And the game is they'd go around with a pool noodle, and they'd hit you, and you'd freeze, and then somebody else would come along with another pool noodle, and they hit you, and you could move again. And I forget what the exact point of the game was. I think it was to like throw a ball in the net or something. So that was there in my mind, and if you've read Bridgworld, you're like, yeah, that's Zegma. It's just played in zero gravity. And then it was just combined with some more elements of rugby, where you're trying to stick the ball into the end zone, if you will.
Yeah.
But no, I wanted to make some changes later on after the first book came out, because the society is so utilitarian that the idea of them having a sport is kind of laughable at the same that to start with. But it's 5 points for a stick or something like that. I'd have to look at my notes. This stuff escapes me. And I was like, it should just be a single point. Well, why would it not be a single point?
Stick, yeah.
So then I had to go back in later books. It'll show up in the third book where I had to explain why a stick is 5 points, because there's new rules that'll show up. But yeah, the other big sport, because Zegma is like, I would say it's like the American equivalent of basketball. Like every high school has a basketball team, but at least in the South, and I'm sure Texas is the same way, it's football. Yeah. Football is king. So Zegma is kind of basketball, and in the Bridgeworld universe, football would be Quizex, which I don't know where I came up with that name. It's a weird name. But it shows up in the third book. And the funny thing about that...
So we do eventually find out what Quizex is.
You do, in the third book, yep. But the funny thing is, I had no idea what it was. I just dropped a name and dropped some weird positions in the first... At least the first book. I think I dropped them in the second book as well. So yeah, when you don't know what they are in the first book, I didn't know what they were in the first book either. When I was writing the third book, I actually had to sit down and okay, I got to invent a sport again.
Mm-hmm. So I know between Bridgeworld 1 and Bridgeworld 2 wasn't the second book you wrote, correct?
Right. So I couldn't get Bridgeworld published when I first wrote it. Like I sent it out to agents, everything. I probably got like 200 rejections. So okay, well, I'm going to move along, and I ended up writing the first Triton book, which is a very good book, unlike the second Triton book that I just tried to write.
For some reason, I thought you had 3 Triton books out.
The first Triton book was a very big book, so my publisher that went to, they were like, let's split it into 2, and I was like, do I get double the advance? And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay then. And I never liked it being split into 2, but... You know, I needed the money, just being honest.
That's fair. And you have the rights back to Triton now, is that correct?
I have the rights back to every book, because the publishing world is a very, very brutal business, and all of the publishers that I've signed with have gone out of business.
Fair. So small houses and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it happens all the time, unless you're dealing with like the big... It used to be Big 7. I think it's just Big 5 now. I think some of them got absorbed together.
Yeah, it's Big 5 now, I believe. And then there's some offshoots of each. Each of them has different presses and imprints that they use and all that, of course.
But
I know some pretty stable, smaller prints, but I mean,
they go out of business all the time.
Yeah, the ones that are stable are generally ran by like to name drop like Falstaff Books is John Harkness's press. And they tend to stick more to the novella range books, but they're very stable. You know, Wordfire Press is Kevin J. Anderson's press, and they're nice and stable. One of the new publishers, one that I'm actually working with now that I did Salvage Title through, is Chris Kennedy Publishing, and he has several imprints, and I mean they're on fire. And you know, so there are some, but by and large, I mean, it seems like any person that does self-publishing, not necessarily you, not pointing fingers at anyone that I know that may be listening to this, anyone that is into publishing just starts up their own imprint for themselves, which makes sense, right? Have protection, et cetera, et cetera.
I make so much more money just not having to share with a publisher. Yeah. And then all the publicity that when I sign with them, they're like, you know you have to do all the publicity. I'm like, well, then what the hell are you doing? You know, you put a cover on the book and gave me an edit. That's nice, but why are you taking, you know, as much royalty from every book as I'm getting? It just seemed kind of bullshitty to me.
Well, and I read too, or heard, I don't remember if I heard you say it or if I read somewhere that the publisher Bridgeworld was with originally, the edits they did were kind of
they were
very
terrible.
Lackluster, right? Like not really even a proof edit, right?
Yeah, it was awful. Because like I had never been published before, so I didn't really know what to expect. And then. Well, I know this now, but they're supposed to be constantly sending you stuff to edit with. I never got anything back until I showed up at a convention where the book launch was. That was the first time I saw the book. I never saw a manuscript. I saw the cover. They sent me the cover, and they did a great job on the cover. But yeah, it was bad. And then I learned with Triton, which came out probably 3 months later, and that came out with a different publisher, that, okay, well, you're going to do 3 rounds of edits, then a line edit, and then another edit with the big editor. Then everything's out. So I was like, okay, well, this is how it's supposed to be. Yeah, but you have to be careful out there in the small press world. There's
Definitely. I mean,
vultures.
it's your work. These are your babies.
Yeah, there's they weren't bad people that I was published with. They just they weren't good at being a publisher, but they were decent people.
Well, I mean, you know, doing this yourself now, how not inexpensive it is to hire out editing. Because editing yourself is one thing, but you need someone to go through it, right? It's the time involved in getting the beta readers and that input back, and then making those changes, and then you have to do your own edits, and you're doing probably 2 or 3 edits before you're even sending to anyone in the first place, and you get tired of rereading your own shit.
Very, very tired.
And all this other stuff in between. So I mean, it's not only costly money wise when you're paying for a good editor. It can cost you easily $1,500, $2,000 to get a good editor for a book.
For a novel, it's usually like $1,500.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty easy to burn through that, and so you're already investing that time, investing that money. You've been working on, like you said, Triton, the third book there, or the second book, as it were. Working on that for 18 months, and now that's more time, more money, and I imagine can somewhat suck your soul.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all happiness and sunshine and rainbows all the time. And
I don't mean that to sound like super down. I just mean I understand and I respect the process you're going through.
Yeah, we're in a weird time for publishing, because self-publishing for so many years, it was like a faux pas. Like, people just laugh at somebody self-published. What, you got a bunch of books sitting in your garage? There's no distribution for them or anything. Whereas now, if you have your own audience on YouTube like I do, I get a higher percentage of the royalties. I get them out quicker. I have total control over everything.
Right.
It makes so much more financial sense to self-publish unless you're getting a really, really good deal from a major publisher.
Yeah. I mean, you get a good deal from a major publisher, and you can, and to anyone paying attention to this, getting into the self-publishing world, you can do research. You can follow, Travis's YouTube. There's plenty of other good. There's like Kindlepreneur and some others that I've heard of, at least. But it is daunting to get into. So I get why some people go with some of these smaller publishers. Make sure if you do that, you're checking the contract to make sure you're getting the rights back after X amount of years. You're getting the rights back after, if they go under, it's not retained by an individual. Make sure that you are protecting yourselves.
When you're starting out, like, I really do recommend signing with a publisher, because I learned so much signing with those publishers that I did, and I didn't have an audience then. So the little advances that I got, or them paying for the cover, them paying for the edit, I couldn't afford to do that back then.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a daunting task, and plus, keep in mind, you have to be a little bit tech savvy to do this stuff too.
Oh yeah.
It's not, you have to get it set. It's an investment in yourselves, and so your first book, and in this is my opinion, I don't know if you agree or not, and again, this is outside looking in from a business standpoint, not to get too deep in the weeds. Your first book, you should be sending out to editors anyway, or to agents and publishers and everything else anyway, and
just to
make sure that you get acceptance to see if you're any good. Yeah, pay attention to what feedback you're getting. Because it's easy to write something and think, okay, I finally did this. Here it is. If it hasn't had any first draft edits, second draft, third draft, everything else, you want to know that it's good, because if you're going to be good later, you don't want a piece of crap out there in the world for everyone to see.
No. And when I put Bridgeworld down that first time, when I was writing other things, I actually did write some short stories. And I sent them off to magazines and stuff to get traditionally published, and they got rejected. And that, you talk about some garbage. Holy shit. Those things were all just absolutely terrible. So, I am immensely grateful that they're not out there in the world. Like, I stumbled across one the other day, and I was like, what the hell is this? It reads like some shit that I would have written in middle school.
Well,
But I mean, writing them was a good experience to learn, and you know, I was able to write Bridgeworld probably in part just from the experience of writing those. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you want to go through gatekeepers until you know you can get through a gatekeeper every time.
That's put so
And
much
then
better than the way I put it.
yeah, and then you want to have the financial wherewithal to be able to afford to get a cover made,
Mm-hmm.
afford to get that edit done. You also want to have the social platform to where you can sell the damn thing. So,
More and more important these days, for sure.
yeah. But, I mean, so many people I think get mixed up with, okay, I wrote the book, I put it up on, you know, KDP or Smashwords or whatever, it's published. Why am I not getting money? Why am I not being paid? Well, it's because nobody's buying it.
Yeah, and I'd
You know,
say the
hardest,
first thing to that is the cover. In my mind, when people first see it, I just a really bad cover. Nobody's even going to read the blurb.
yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is them knowing who you are, to be
True.
honest with you. Then cover's big. If you can have an advertising budget, I've had different success. I paid for Goodreads ads one time. That didn't do shit. I've paid I've paid on directly through Amazon, and that was all right. But I mean, the biggest thing is people know who I am. You know, I have over 350 videos on YouTube. People see me, they know who I am, and they trust me to give them a read, which is how I, as a reader, pick up books.
Mm-hmm.
I'll randomly pick one up from time to time, sure, but the books that I keep going back to, and I go to a bookstore and I'm willing to pay, you know, a new book price for, are authors that I've read before, and I trust them to give me a good tale, which is why it's very important not to put crap out early in your career.
Absolutely, it's absolutely right. And that's not to say that you can't come back for those things. It just makes it more difficult on
No.
you as an individual. You know, one thing that I've learned, I know, just on my first book, it only has, I think, just about 40 reviews on Audible, and most of those are positive. One of them's not so positive. Okay, no big deal.
You say that, but it's hard to get past negative reviews.
Well, it is and it isn't. Like for me, the reason I found it no big deal is it wasn't the first review. It was actually like the 37th or something like that.
That's good. Yeah.
But also it didn't have any substance, which I would point out to people. Look, if you want to leave a negative review, absolutely do, but please give something critical people can pay attention to.
Yeah.
You know, because I want to get better, and also it helps because it was a product that I was really proud, or I am rather really proud of. Just like Bridgeworld, I'm really proud of how this came out. It's not just acting like a professional product. It is a professional product. It's as good production-wise as just about anything else you're going to see out there. Now, whether you like my voice or not, I can't help that, and I hope you do.
It took me a while to get that understanding of negative reviews. Of
Yeah.
maybe it's personal. Like maybe somebody saw me doing something with my guinea pigs and they think I
Mhm.
abuse animals, so they went and left a review on one of my books, which has happened. Um, but yeah, the funny thing is, like, a couple negative reviews, they did actually give constructive criticism
Mhm.
and tell me how I can get better. And so, you know, that's actually more helpful than a positive review. But most of them, they're like, this book just sucks. This is hot garbage. This, you know, that kind of stuff. And a lot of times I look at them on Amazon and it won't even say verified purchase.
Right.
So, you know, I'm allowed to at least delude myself perhaps a little bit, like, okay, this is just a personal attack.
Yeah, and that's
But
not
no,
to say reviews don't matter. Reviews are very important.
they are. And the bad reviews, they always stand out more than the good reviews. That's just the
Mhm.
nature of humankind. I mean, for
Yeah.
my videos on animals, 95% of the comments are fantastic, but the ones that, you know, really stick in my craw and I think about at night are the idiots out there telling me how I'm being abusive. And you just tend to gloss over the good ones. So it's
Well,
important for me to sit down and really appreciate the good reviews and say, okay, there's a lot of people that are enjoying this stuff.
well, look, here's the thing about your animal videos is if I ever get a guinea pig, I know exactly the things I can do with a guinea pig.
Uh, there's so many people that don't understand that videos are satire. When I made those videos,
No.
I had no idea that they were going to get millions upon millions of views.
I wish I could make a
Right.
video that would get millions upon millions of views.
Hey, it's nice getting the ad revenue coming
Yeah.
in every month.
Yeah. Well, that's really good. I have I had asked the same question, but not having the same Twitter following, I didn't get any questions from people. So I'll ask another one myself. um, when you went back, and this is just from a personal standpoint, because I know there was a not having an outline, everything else. There's a period of time between Bridgeworld 1 and 2, and you said there were some things you wanted to change with Bridgeworld 1. When you went back and wrote Bridgeworld 2, how many times did you have to go back and reread your original work to make sure that you didn't have errors in continuity going into the second?
Well, the first thing I did when I was like, it's time to start writing, I made an outline, and then I went and I read the book. Like, I just sat down and read it. And that was pure hell, because I had just written that first book like less than a year before. So going back in it again was just awful. And I was like, I hate this goddamn book so much. But it was important to get back into the swing of things. And I had to do it again when I started the third book. I had to go back and read the first book and second book.
If you could change one character from book 1, who would you change and why? And that's not to say they need to be changed. Anyone listening?
I don't know if I would change any of them, because they do change later on.
Well, they grow. They're all, 14,
yeah, I mean, that's a very
kids.
Formative year of your life. Yeah. There's nothing really jumping out. I mean, maybe I could have hinted at some stuff about Abby and her father, who turns into a bigger character in the second and especially the third book.
Well, I like her dad. I liked playing her dad. That was fun.
Oh, you're gonna have fun with him in the third book then. No, I think it's important just to let it grow. I mean, the biggest problem, like if I could go back and write the first book over again, would just be my skill as a writer, which is something I have to deal with every book when I get done writing it. I'm a better writer at the end than I was at the beginning. So you have to resist the urge to, rip it all up and write the entire thing over again.
Well, I think that's a struggle with every artistic venture, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that some audiobook people, they completely redo the entire book once they get a new booth made.
Look, I wanted it to be good quality, but I think it turned out, and it shows, and it definitely not just the booth quality. I'm a better narrator than I was when I started, for sure. And if you go back and just listen to Storytell podcast, which those that do follow my channel, the few subscribers I have, and hopefully more soon. If you're listening to this now, Storytell podcast is my short story podcast, and if you listen to episode 1 of season 1, it's not bad. It's not great either. But I progressed as a narrator. Now, if you watch if you listen to them in quick succession, you're going to notice that they're very different in quality. But, that's just neither here nor there. I'm still proud of it. So
I think it's actually important to go back and for me, read my earlier stuff or watch my earlier videos, because when you're constantly looking uphill and you're struggling, I mean, there's a cartoon out there, but you're always looking up and you feel like you're not going anywhere. It's important to look behind you and look back down and see how far you've come.
Yeah,
so for me, like when I watch my early YouTube videos, it's so cringy. It is so cringy. And then, like I said earlier, some of that early stuff that I was writing when I was just kind of cutting my teeth at it, it's just so awful. So it is helpful for me to kind of appreciate where I've come, because in all honesty, the way that I feel is like I'm still in the exact same spot that I was 6 years ago. So it's important to take me out and like look at things like, okay, how would you have felt 6 years ago if you had just woken up overnight and you had 30,000 subscribers on YouTube, you're selling several thousand books a year, you've got all this stuff, and I would have been over the moon back then. But because I accumulated it so slowly, I'd still feel the same. So it's important to turn around and look.
Well, and that's with pretty much anything, right? That's it's one of those things where when we're doing anything in life, we're experiencing it as it happens, and so the bad things seem like they happen so fast, and it's just and they linger, right?
Yeah.
But the things that are good and that are trickling in and over, and they're piling up and they're filling that pool, as they trickle, it's one of those things we don't notice unless we look back. You have to look at where you've been to find out where you're going, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. So, real quick, Travis, and I'm going to have links down in the description as well, but I really appreciate you coming on, my YouTube as well. If y'all want to see Travis interview me, go check out in link below in the description. If you're listening to this right when it comes out, we're going to have to get links from one another, so it'll be there. But check out the link below and check out his entire page. Like I said, 350 plus videos of sheer awesomeness. And if nothing else, those cringy videos he's talking about at the beginning will be a good
Don't
laugh.
watch those.
And definitely watch those. But other than that, Travis, those that don't know, where can they find you? And I'll have links below as well, guys.
Well, I'm on YouTube at youtube.com/Travis Mcbee. On Facebook, I think that's author Travis Mcbee. Twitter and Instagram is Travis_McBee. But the YouTube is the biggest one probably.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally I'll tweet, but Facebook it's gotten some. I'm uploading my backlist on there because Facebook was like, hey, we want your videos, and I was like, okay. But yeah, so if you see a new video on Facebook, it's not really new. But yeah, YouTube's the best.
Fair. And everyone, y'all can find me at kcjohnstoncreates on Facebook and Instagram, kcjohnstonreads on Twitter. Again, links below. Of course, kcjohnstoncreates here on YouTube. I really appreciate everyone for joining us today. Read to you next time.